Your 1978 Polaris TX cost you $2,400. That was 12% of the median household income that year. You saved up for 6 months, maybe a year. You brought it home on a trailer, and that machine became part of your family. Today's equivalent sled costs $18,500. That's 26% of household income. Same basic machine, same purpose, same dream, but double the financial burden. That's not inflation. That's not progress. That's a calculated betrayal that started in 1982, when Arctic Cat filed for bankruptcy, and the Big Four realized something crucial. They didn't need to build sleds for working families anymore. They could chase premium buyers, eliminate the competition, and price out the next generation entirely. And I can prove it. I'm talking to you guys specifically. The ones who remember when snowmobiling wasn't a luxury hobby, when it was something a factory worker or a school teacher could save up for and actually own. When you could pull into your garage on a Saturday morning, crack open a service manual, and rebuild the top end yourself with basic tools. You knew every component, every wire, every bolt. That sled wasn't just a machine, it was yours in a way that modern riders will never understand. And what happened to that version of snowmobiling? It didn't fade away naturally. It was deliberately killed off. Let me show you exactly how. In 1971, the snowmobile industry hit its absolute peak. 495,000 units sold worldwide in a single year. That record still stands today. Nobody's even come close. Last year, manufacturers moved 112,650 sleds globally. That's a 77% decline over 53 years. But here's what they don't tell you. In 1971, there were only 1.5 million registered snowmobiles on the trails. By the mid-1980s, even after the so-called crash, there were over 4 million machines in operation. 4 million. The market had grown. More people were riding than ever before. So if the rider base expanded, why did sales collapse? Why did 250 manufacturers shrink down to 4? The official story blames the 1973 oil embargo, the EPA noise regulations, bad winters in 75 and 76. And sure, those things happened, but that's not why your favorite brands died. Let me tell you about Scorpion, because what happened to them is what happened to every independent manufacturer that actually cared about riders. Scorpion started as trail-a-sled back in 1959. Glenn Gutzman and Donald Bergstrom built air-powered machines in a small garage in Crosby, Minnesota. By 1965, they'd patented the first continuous rubber track in the United States. Revolutionary technology, the Scorpion name became legendary. Vice President Hubert Humphrey called Crosby the official snowmobile capital of the world. Sir Edmund Hillary, the guy who climbed Mount Everest, chose Scorpions for his polar expeditions. That's how good they were. By 1969, Scorpion employed over 400 people and was producing 20,000 machines annually. They made everything in-house: their own hoods, seats, windshields, tunnels, clutches, even the rubber for engine mounts and bogie wheels. Total vertical integration. They didn't need anybody. Then Fuqua Industries bought them in January 1969, a conglomerate out of Atlanta with no soul and no connection to the sport. Here's where the betrayal starts. The founders, Gutzman and his partners, got forced out in October 1970, asked to leave the facility they built and never return. The company they created ripped away from them. By December 1971, Fuqua expanded the Crosby facility. Everything looked great on paper. Then 1973 hit. The oil embargo, sure, but also massive overproduction. The big manufacturers deliberately flooded the market. Kawasaki, Mercury, Johnson, Evinrude. All these massive corporations with deep pockets entered the game, knowing they could lose money for years and not care. Scorpion couldn't. The layoffs started. 360 employees down to 120, almost overnight. The company got sold again in 1973 to a management group that tried desperately to save it. And they tried hard. God, they tried. The whip model in 1975 was brilliant. Lightest sport sled in the industry. One of the quietest. Snowgoer magazine ranked it at the top in comfort, handling, and fuel economy. Stock whips were winning races. Brad Hewlings rode one to second place at Eagle River. Roger Ebert finished the Winnipeg to St. Paul the Firmer 500 on a stock whip. These weren't factory race sleds. These were machines you could buy at the dealer and actually compete on. Didn't matter. Arctic Cat bought Scorpion in 1978, hoping to save the brand. By 1979, they shut down the Crosby facility and moved production to Thief River Falls. In February 1981, Arctic Cat itself filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Scorpion died with them in 1982. 22,000 machines at their peak. Gone. And it wasn't because their sleds were bad. If this sounds familiar, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're just getting started and you need to hear what happened next. Snowjet. Beautiful blue sleds powered by Yamaha engines, partnered with one of the most reliable engine manufacturers on Earth. By the early 70s, they were selling tens of thousands annually. Kawasaki bought them in 1976. By 1980, the brand was dead. Rupp Industries started in the 50s making go-karts. By the 70s, their Nitro and Snow Sport models were performance legends. Fast, sleek, built for riders who wanted adrenaline. Financial troubles in 1973. Sold off assets. Out of business by 1978. Roloflex in Saskatchewan got a $2 million Canadian government grant in 1970. The catch? They had to abandon farm equipment manufacturing and focus only on snowmobiles. By April 1974, they filed for bankruptcy. Mercury Marine started selling snowmobiles in 1968. Their first model was so catastrophically bad, they told dealers to burn them and send photos for refunds. But by 1973, the Snow Twister was dominating race circuits. Racing success didn't translate to retail sales. They quit. John Deere, Harley-Davidson, Johnson, Evinrude, Massey Ferguson, Chaparral, even J.C. Penney and Montgomery Ward sold their own branded machines. All gone. This is what actually happened. The Big Four didn't just survive by luck, they engineered the consolidation. In 1972, when sales dipped slightly to 460,000 units, nobody panicked. There were 2 million registered sleds on the trails. The market seemed indestructible, but the manufacturers started a race to the bottom. Not on price, on volume. Bombardier alone produced 262,500 snowmobiles in 1971. 250,000 sleds from one company. That's overproduction on purpose. Flood the market, drive down margins. The big players could absorb losses for years. The small, independent manufacturers couldn't. They were using their own savings, their own mortgages, their own families' futures. Then came the EPA noise regulations. Quieter sleds, better for everybody, right? Except testing and remanufacturing costs crushed the smaller guys. The big companies had research and development budgets in the millions. They had engineers on salary. The little manufacturers were working out of garages and small facilities, trying to compete with corporations. Once again, the 1973 oil embargo was real. Gas prices tripled. But let's be honest here. Snowmobiles don't use that much fuel. A weekend of riding? Maybe 10 gallons. The oil crisis killed snowmobiles. Narrative was convenient. It masked what was really happening. Corporate consolidation, planned market saturation, elimination of competition. By 1974, sales dropped to 435,000. Then the winters of 75 and 76 were mild. Poor snow conditions across the snowbelt, and suddenly manufacturers had massive unsold inventory sitting in warehouses. The 1979 oil embargo finished off whoever was still hanging on. Sales collapsed to under 200,000 by 1979. By 1986, 103,000, the lowest point in modern history. But here's what they don't tell you. The crash happened because the market got saturated by design. Too many sleds built too fast. Then the big manufacturers pivoted to premium pricing. They stopped building affordable machines for working-class families and started chasing wealthy buyers who wanted more power, more features, more complexity, and more expensive dealer service. Think about the sleds that actually sold in the 70s. The Polaris Indy 500, the Arctic Cat El Tigre, the Ski-Doo TNT. These were the workhorses. Mid-range sleds with standard slide rail suspensions, reasonable windshields, fan-cooled engines you could work on yourself. They cost $2,000 to $3,000 in 70s money. You could maintain them, rebuild them, pass them down to your kids. Those sleds disappeared, replaced by $15,000 to $20,000 turbocharged, fuel-injected, computer-controlled machines that require dealer service for everything. Let me ask you something, and I want you to drop your answer in the comments below. Do you remember your first sled? Maybe a 72 Arctic Cat Panther? Maybe a 76 Polaris TX? Maybe a 79 Ski-Doo Citation? You could take it apart in your driveway, replace the drive belt, adjust the carburetor, change the spark plugs, clean the points. You knew every system. That relationship is gone. Modern sleds have engine control units, computerized fuel injection mapping, electronic reverse, GPS navigation built into the dash, heated seats and grips. Some even have Bluetooth connectivity so you can listen to music while you ride. You can't work on them anymore. You're not allowed to. The dealer has proprietary diagnostic software that costs thousands of dollars. Try to modify anything and you void the warranty instantly. The manufacturers want you dependent. They want you coming back every season for service, for updates, for repairs that you used to handle yourself. And the price? A 2025 Ski-Doo Summit starts at $18,499. That's not even the top-end model. A Polaris Patriot Boost R MKK HAOS costs $19,499. The Arctic Cat M8000 Mountain Cat Alpha 1, $18,899. Yamaha's Sidewinder SRX LE, $19,699. These are snowmobiles, not cars, not trucks, not motorcycles. Snowmobiles. Machines that sit unused for 8 months out of the year in most places. Machines that you use maybe 20 weekends per season if you're lucky. The average age of a snowmobiler right now is 54 years old. You want to know why? Because young people can't afford to get into the sport. A college graduate with student loans isn't dropping 20 grand on a recreational vehicle. A young family with a mortgage and daycare costs can't justify that expense. The manufacturers literally priced out the next generation. And here's the math that proves it. In 1970, the median household income in America was $8,734. A new Arctic Cat sold for about $1,100. That's 12.6% of annual household income. In 2025, the median household income is roughly $70,000. That $18,500 sled? 26.4% of annual income. Double the financial burden. But it gets worse. In 1970, you could buy a used sled from the previous year for maybe $700. Less than 8% of annual income. A working person could afford that. Now, a 1-year-old used sled still costs $14,000 minimum, 20% of income. The manufacturers killed the affordable used market by making sleds so complex and computer-dependent that anything older than 5 years becomes a maintenance nightmare. And racing, the absolute heart of innovation and community, got completely corporatized. In the 70s, you could watch a guy win Eagle River on Saturday and then see that same sled model at your local dealer on Monday. Stock machines, real connections between racing and retail. Brad Hewlings on that Scorpion whip. Roger Ebert finishing the I-500. Those were production sleds. Now racing sleds are hand-built, purpose-made machines that cost $40,000 and bear absolutely no resemblance to anything you can buy. The connection between racing and production is gone. Racing became marketing theater instead of genuine product development. This is why guys like us feel betrayed. And if you're nodding your head right now, do me a favor and drop a comment below telling me what sled you grew up on. I want to hear your stories, because this isn't nostalgia. This isn't old guys complaining that things were better back in the day. This is about a promise that got broken. You were told snowmobiling was for everyone, for families, for working people who wanted adventure on winter weekends. The magazines, the dealer ads, the whole culture said this is your ticket to freedom, to exploration, to joining a community of riders who'd become lifelong friends. And it was true for a while. You saved up, bought your first sled, maybe a used Polaris Colt or a Ski-Doo Citation. You learned to work on it. Joined a club, helped groom trails on Wednesday nights, made friends at the gas station at the trailhead. Your kids learned to ride. Snowmobiling became part of your identity, part of your winters, part of who you are. Then the manufacturers changed the deal. They made sleds you can't afford and can't fix. They eliminated the mid-range models entirely. They turned a democratic sport into a luxury hobby for wealthy people. And when you complain, they tell you you're living in the past. That progress requires sacrifice. That if you can't afford a new sled, that's your problem, not theirs. But it's not your problem, it's their choice. They chose profit margins over accessibility. They chose premium buyers over loyal communities. They chose quarterly earnings over the long-term health of the sport. That's the betrayal. They took something that belonged to all of us and made it exclusive, gatekept by price and complexity. Scorpion, Rupp, Snowjet, and all those brands died because the big guys squeezed them out intentionally. But what really died was the philosophy they represented. Building sleds for normal people. Sleds you could own, maintain, and pass down to your kids. Sleds that connected you to the machine and the terrain and the community. There are 1.3 million registered snowmobiles in the United States right now. Over 559,000 in Canada, but only 41,588 new sleds were sold in America last year. Only 34,828 in Canada. That means the overwhelming majority of riders are on older machines. Used sleds, some from the 2000s, some from the 2000s. And yeah, some of us are still running machines from the 90s and even the 80s, because those sleds still work. They're simple, they're fixable, they're reliable, and they remind us of what snowmobiling used to be before it became a status symbol for people with disposable income. So here's what I want from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me your first sled, year and model. And be honest, do you still have it or do you regret selling it? Because I guarantee half of you wish you'd kept that machine. If you want more videos like this that actually tell the truth about what happened to this sport we love, hit that subscribe button. And check out the next video where I break down exactly which modern sleds are actually worth buying if you refuse to pay dealer markup. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the trail.